was because they needed to find something to do with 260 tons of frozen turkeys that were left over from Thanksgiving. Talk about a lot of turkey dinners. And a lot of people don't really get that turkey ones, so...
I love the turkey ones.
Number 5. This is our last one today. And it's kind of small. Number 5. Turkeys in space. Turkeys as food has become such an important staple and comfort food of Americans that turkey has ever even been served in space. The first meal in space was a turkey dinner, and Thanksgiving has celebrated on that, and a number of space shuttles, including the Columbia and the Mir.
The Columbia and the what?
Mir?
Mir?
M-I-R.
Mir!
The Mir Space Station.
Okay, I was confused for a minute. I'm like, what? Okay, that makes sense. Cool!
I'm gonna do a 6th one. So it's +1 today.
+1 edition! I love +1 edition.
So do I.
So today's +1 editions is, says Americans eat the weight of Singapore in turkey every Thanksgiving. According to the study done by National Turkey Association, Americans ate 6,900 million pounds of turkey during Thanksgiving in 2007. That is equal to the weight of the entire population of Singapore. If that isn't enough to make you feel stuffed, then nothing will.
Cool.
Cool?
That is very cool.
That's a crazy amount of turkey is what that is.
Although, there is one part of the turkey we don't get here in the States, most of us. And that is the tail.
Yeah.
That goes to Hawaii. Like the fatty tails of turkeys, for some reason, and I don't remember. I know I heard this on an episode of No Such Thing as a Fish, and I don't remember all the whys and wherefores, but I want to say that the turkey tail originally was sent to service people in their rations, and they didn't want them, so they gave them to the local populace. And so turkey tails to this day are still a big deal in Hawaii, and they eat tons of them.
So does that mean if we go to the Hawaiian Brothers, not sponsored by the way, they'll have turkey tails for their Thanksgiving meal?
I doubt they have a Thanksgiving meal, and I haven't seen it on their menu, and I ate there as recently as last Friday.
Yeah, no turkey tails.
So,
well, if they did, that'd be a good idea.
It would be. So, let's begin with the Bloody Benders, because Kansas is fairly close.
Yeah, not too far.
Now, 19th century Kansas was a bloody and a dangerous place. First of all, before it became a state, you had anti-slavery free soilers, that's in quotes, free soilers, fighting with pro-slavery groups for control of the state and perhaps its soul, if you want to frame it that way. Mm-hmm. Once it became a state and declared itself as being with the Union, it remained a bloody place. One, because the Civil War pitted family member against family member in some cases. And two, Civil War veterans, hardened and used to violence, continued to use those skills to waylay travelers who passed through the new state on their way westward. Furthermore, Native Americans made a group of bloody reprisals against what they saw as an invading force, especially since a sizable proportion of the Native Americans in Kansas were sent to live in what would become Oklahoma, in what they called Indian Territory. So, near what in the modern day is called Cherryvale, Kansas, in 1870, 5 families of so-called spiritualists settled in what would become known as the Bender Mounds. The dad, John Sr., chose a 160-acre plot along the Independence-Fort Scott Trail that people used to travel from Independence to Fort Scott. Weird how they named that trail.
Yeah, you know.
The son picked up a strip of land just north of his father's, but never lived on his claim or made any improvements to it. Now, the Benders were comprised of John Sr. and his wife Elmira. Then there was his son, John Jr., and his daughter, Kate. They soon built a barn, a cabin, and a small one-room house, and basically a few small buildings. Now, they used a sheet to separate their cabin into a living area and a small store that sold feed, ammunition, tobacco, and a few other essentials for people on the road. In fact, they hung a little shingle out in front that said groceries. They also sold meals and a supposedly safe place for travelers to rest.
Yeah,
If you say supposedly, I'm guessing it's not.
yes, well, they are called the Bloody Benders for a reason.
And there is some evidence that Kate might have sold a little more than that.
I'm gonna say that Kate didn't do it. Wrong Kate.
Of course not our Kate.
No.
What the crap was that?
Here we're talking about Kate Bender. Kate with a K.
Picture.
But there is some evidence that Kate might have sold companionship.
Well, that's okay. There's a reason it's the world's oldest profession.
There is. Now, to the outside world, the Benders kept mostly to themselves and appeared to be simply as struggling homesteaders who worked hard to earn their living, like other area pioneers. Now, John Bender Sr. was 60 years old when he arrived in the area, and Elmira about 55. And they both spoke with such thick Germanic accents that it was very hard to understand them.
Mm-hmm.
And John was a giant of a man who, because of his piercing black eyes and set deeply under huge bushy brows, earned him the nickname of Old Beetle-Browed John. And a lot of people described him as a wild and woolly-looking man. Now, Mrs. Bender, Elmira, was so unfriendly that her neighbors referred to her as a she-devil. Also, Ma Bender claimed she could speak with the dead. And she also boiled herbs and roots that she declared could be used to cast charms or wicked spells.
Well, there you go.
Her husband and son were said to have feared her as she ran the household with an iron hand. Now, John Bender Jr. was a tall, slender man of about 25 who was handsome with auburn hair and a mustache. He spoke English fluently with a German accent. He was said to have been social, but he was prone to laughing aimlessly, which led many people to think he was a half-wit. Now, daughter Kate was the friendliest of the bunch. She spoke good English with just a slight accent and bore cultivated social skills. She was a beautiful girl of about 23, and she often held talks about spiritualism Now, and both she and John attended Sunday school at nearby Harmony Grove, and they were readily accepted into the community. And Kate was a self-proclaimed healer and psychic. She gave lectures on spiritualism, and she conducted seances. She also claimed to possess psychic powers, including the ability to communicate with the dead. Distributing circulars that proclaimed her skills, including supernatural powers and the ability to cure illnesses and infirmities, she soon found the lecture circuit profitable.
What year was this again?
1870. Now, she had a desire for notoriety, and she often advocated free love and justification for murder in her lectures, which went over like a lead balloon in the 1870s, let me tell you.
Well, yeah, that was kind of like, this seems a little off, but okay.
When the Benders opened their store and inn in 1871, many travelers would stop for a meal or supplies. However, some of those men, who frequently carried large sums of cash with the intention of settling, buying stock, or purchasing a claim, began to go missing.
Yeah.
When friends and family began to look for them, they could trace them as far as the Big Hill country of southeast Kansas before they could find no trace of these lost travelers.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Now, when neighboring communities started to make slanderous insinuations, the Osage Township called a meeting held at the Harmony Grove Schoolhouse in March to see what, if anything, could be done. About 75 people attended the gathering, including both the Bender men. The discussion began regarding the 10 people who were reported missing, including a well-known independence physician named Dr. William H. York. With the full realization that there truly was a major problem in their township, the group decided to search every farmstead between Big Hill Creek and Drum Creek. When most of the attendees volunteered to have their premises searched, the Benders remained silent. Sometime later, Billy Toll, a neighbor of the Benders, noticed that the Bender Inn was abandoned and their farm animals unfed. Toll reported the news to Leroy F. Dick, the township trustee, and a search party was soon formed, which included Dr. York's brother, Colonel A.M. York of Fort Scott. When the men arrived at the property, they found the cabin empty of food, clothing, and personal possessions. They were also met by a terrible smell inside the abandoned inn. A trap door, nailed shut, was discovered in the floor of the cabin. Prying it open, the men found a 6-foot deep hole that was filled with clotted blood, causing the terrible odor.
Fun.
However, there were no bodies in the hole. Finally, the men physically moved the entire cabin to the side and began to search beneath, but no bodies were found there either. They began to dig around the cabin, especially in the area the Benders had utilized as a vegetable garden and an orchard. At the site of a freshly stirred depression in the earth, they found the first body, buried head downward with its feet scarcely covered. The corpse was that of Dr. William H. York, his skull bludgeoned, and his throat cut from ear to ear. The digging continued the next day, and 9 other bodies and numerous dismembered body parts were found, including a woman and a little girl. The burial site was christened Hell's Half-Acre, and another brother of Dr. York, a lawyer and state senator residing in Independence, offered a $1,000 reward for information leading to the Bender family's arrest. On May 17th, Governor Thomas Osborne added to that amount by offering a $2,000 reward for the apprehension of all 4. Now, some discussion is necessary here. We've talked about this before. But $2,000 in the 1870s was a princely sum.
Yep.
Understand that you could get 10 nails for a penny.
Yep.
And that might have been expensive in some places.
Sure.
Money just, like, penny candy was expensive candy. Like, it was more often that you got several pieces of candy for a penny.
Oh, yeah.